Hi, everyone. My name is Terry, and welcome to Friday Fact Day, where I get to talk about my work in fitness, feminism, and philosophy. And today's fact is springtime. 'Tis the season to talk about dress codes. Yay. So, the reason dress codes are important to this particular channel is that they are almost exclusively directed at girls or women or feminized persons. Every spring, as the weather gets a little bit warmer, schools in particular start enforcing dress codes, and they are as reliable a sign of spring as the daffodils opening in the garden. The main storyline, usually in the news and across the Twitterverse, is that schools are having arguments with students about what is acceptable or not acceptable dress code wise. And sometimes you see it in things around employment, but generally it's aimed at teenagers. Years ago, I remember, there was the dress length or the skirt length, and I think there's still some of that in most school dress codes. Things like visibility of a bra strap, how much cleavage is shown, midriff being shown, shoulders being bare, all of those sorts of things usually come into the dress codes. And the reason they do is because these are clothes that accentuate or draw attention to the sexual areas of the body or the sexualized areas of the body. And that doesn't really change at all when we get to adult women in the workforce. It's pretty much the same thing again. The language might be a little less harsh and the admonishment might be a little more professional, but it's really going to basically all boil down to whatever you're wearing makes me think of sex. This post came across my Twitter feed earlier this week. This is about working out in a professional workout situation. Now, most gyms will have some form of dress code, and usually there's pretty good reason why. We usually are pretty particular about you having indoor only shoes, and that's because of the amount of dirt that shoes track in, and when that gets into things like treadmills and ellipticals, it can do some real damage inside the machines. We don't want clothing that's overly loose because it's a danger, again, around certain types of machines, and we want you fully clothed and shoed because especially now in the time of COVID, you don't know what you could pick up on your skin. I appreciate you barefoot exercisers, I do, but yeah, not unless I've mopped the gym floor myself am I going to go barefoot in most gyms. And then depending on the management style and the culture they want to cultivate, a gym can also have rules around what kinds of shirts you wear. Quite a lot of them, you can't wear anything super low cut that shows a lot of the rib cage. Some will say that you can't take shirts off. And in some cases, they will be gender specific, that women can't bear a midriff or things like that. But generally speaking, we expect people to be fairly lightly clothed for working out. This is interesting because it takes what I would consider, and certainly any gym I've ever worked in would consider perfectly acceptable, and says that no, these aren't acceptable. And it's really interesting too that a lot of the things that are in this post also cross over with a lot of the content in junior and senior high school dress codes. This one, as well as many of the school ones, explicitly state no yoga pants, which, I mean, I can't go into any of those places. That's my workwear. Like that's what I wear in my professional work. I really take issue with people who say yoga pants aren't professional. Well, when you're a yoga instructor and a fitness instructor, yeah, they are. That's my profession, thanks. The other interesting thing, getting more into the feminist theory side of this particular topic, is that this is really about centering what women are doing in a way that it affects men. And that breaks down into two different things. The first is that men are the center of the focus of a poster like this or of most school dress codes. It's about the boys, the male identifying people who get to say, that's turning me on, therefore it's not appropriate in this setting. The other side of that is that it is ridiculously heteronormative. And what that means, for those not familiar, is that it positions heterosexuality as the norm and the assumption that everybody in this position, in this workout space or school space, is experiencing the same things from the same heterosexual lens. So it's assuming that every man in there is going to be turned on by this woman in her tight yoga pants because every man is turned on by women. So those are the two big problems, is that it's centering male sexuality and it's centering heterosexual sexualities in these decision-making factors. But the other thing, there's one more thing, there's always one more thing. The other thing is that it does a process that we call infantilization. It assumes that these teenage and adult women don't have the capacity or the understanding of the big bad world out there to make these decisions themselves, that they need guidance from stronger, smarter men on how to dress appropriately for the situation they're in. And those smarter, stronger men making the decisions for them also have some level of power over what's going on in their lives. So it's your boss in your job who can fire you if you don't participate. It's your teacher or principal in your school who can flunk you out if you don't do what you're told or check all the boxes. And of course, if a person wants to dress modestly, they absolutely can. And there's plenty of fitness clothing or clothing for sports or dance or any kind of physical activity that can do that for you. You can be completely covered if that's how you feel you want to present yourself in public while you're doing physical activity. That's fine. Ultimately, the problem with dress codes is that it's really, really arbitrary. Who does get to decide what's modest or what's immodest and what's applicable in a given space? Are there things that are appropriate or inappropriate in a given circumstance? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. You don't want to wear your prom dress to the gym. But really, who gets to decide what's modest and what's not is ultimately an individual decision or a decision made by a small body. And if they aren't showing any diversity of gender identity, of sexual orientation, of race, of class, you name it, then that's going to be a pretty narrow definition that goes into that dress code. And finally, I used to work in high schools. I was a high school teacher before I got into fitness and adult education. And I've seen dress codes misapplied. You'll see in schools that have any degree of diversity amongst the student body that the thin, white, middle and upper class girls who have pretty good grades will get away with a lot more. And I very distinctly recall, actually back when I was a student teacher, before I had my license and was teaching on my own, I remember overhearing a conversation, I was eavesdropping in the staff room, that there was a girl wearing a tank top and she was fine within the dress code. Her bra strap wasn't showing. We had to do the 2-finger or 3-finger rule. I forget what it was at that particular school. I remember one of the much, much older, due for retirement at the time, and this was 20 years ago, much, much older teachers saying that this girl, because she was a large young woman, she was an overweight by medical definition person, that letting her arms be bare meant she was a stupid slut. And that conversation that I heard has stuck with me many, many, many years since, decades since, because there's an equation there about being too sexual, who gets permission to show some skin and who doesn't. And if you're not the right person showing the skin, if you're showing the wrong amount for who you are and all your intersections, you're stupid and or you're a slut. And from this old, thankfully retired now, teacher's perspective, this young woman was both. And she was, of course, neither in real life. She was just a young woman wearing a tank top because it was a warm spring day. There's a lot more than just simply, it's a policy, you have to follow it. And when you consider that if she had been in a class with this teacher, he would have had the power to fail her on projects or even the whole course, that's really disturbing. So we always have to question everything about these dress codes, how they're designed, and also how they're applied, because that's just not being done properly. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. Please share, like, subscribe, all the stuff, comment, all that stuff in the box below. And of course, as I always say, lift heavy, fight the patriarchy, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.